Rebel religion in the news.
All right, good day, everybody. Welcome to Rebel Religion in the News. Glad you could be with us today. I'm Jerry O'Lennon, along with Alfredo Romero. He is the pastor of Rock of Life Fellowship, and Bishop Peter Hansen of St. Augustine Anglican Church in downtown Chico. Jimmy Swaggert apparently suffered a heart attack. His son says that without a miracle, his father is going to pass away. He was an interesting man. He's most known for his confession in the pulpit where he said, I was a sinner, and he cries, and some people looked at it and said, oh, it's kind of cringy to look at that nowadays. I'm not so sure I feel the same way. To me, it was a sincere confession of remorse for what he had done. But was it appropriate for him to do it in the pulpit? Looking back all these years, this must have been somewhere in the 80s. When this happened, what's your views generally on Reverend Swaggert? Either one of you?
I don't have deep held views either way on him. I mean, I recall that at the time there was a lot of controversy. Jim Baker and Tammy had just fallen into disgrace, and he climbed up on his soapbox and called them a cancer in the body of Christ, and
then he turned out to do much the same.
He did. He was having girls hired to turn him on. Okay,
right, to pleasure him in some way. Yes,
in some way or another. So
yes.
That's unclear.
Yeah.
And then he confessed that I have sinned with what was regarded and called crocodile tears.
Right. And back on October.
Then he turned around to his denomination. He was Assembly of God pastor. And when they said, "Okay, now Jimmy, we've got to discipline you according to the rules in the Bible and so forth," he said, I'm bigger than you are. I quit membership. I'm going to continue on, which was a sign of some sort of a level of sincerity.
Interesting. But you knew the history of it better than I did. Swaggert was pulled over in 1991 while driving in California, was discovered by authorities to be with a prostitute. It came 3 years after he was caught in an affair with a prostitute in New Orleans, which led him being defrocked by the Assemblies of God.
Yikes.
He'd been cited for driving an unregistered vehicle, driving on the wrong side of the street, et cetera, et cetera. This was in the Coachella Valley. And so it's kind of a seedy thing, and it's a reminder that if you're in the public eye, boy, I tell you what, you got to be very careful when you're preaching. I mean, you got to practice what you preach, right?
Yeah, I remember Jimmy Swaggert because my dad really liked him. So we'd watch him because he would play piano and sing. And
he's very good, too,
He's very
by the
good.
way.
And so
Yes.
my dad loved his music. My dad used to work for 700 Club, and he did some Maranatha back in the days. But I remember because my dad used to tell me, doesn't he look like William Shatner? Yeah, because when he was young, he kind of looked like William Shatner.
That's true.
But my dad would play him and listen to him because of the music and stuff. And then that whole thing with the, women of ill repute or whatever you want to call it, his sin. Yeah, we kind of stopped watching him. But the 80s was kind of, you remember all the 80s? There was like Benny Hinn and Jimmy Swaggart and all the big TV people. And there was another one I'm trying to remember. All I can remember is the guy would go, thank you, friends. I'm trying to remember who that was. A shorter guy, dark hair, a little bit heavy. And but anyway, that was the decade of those kind of guys, and Jerry Falwell and everybody else. But
the decade of the big hair,
big
these
hair.
guys had great hair. I was always disqualified from such a ministry because
The women, too, had the big hair, too.
they had huge hair.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did.
Beehives.
Well, anyway, we gosh, I hope that Jimmy Swaggart, I get the feeling. I hope that he certainly made peace. No, that's the thing. No one knows.
Well, he's 90 years old.
90 years old.
Yeah.
90. That's not a bad life.
That's a long life. That's a long life.
Yeah.
There's another poll out that says the Gallup poll finds a record gap between men and women on whether abortion is morally acceptable. Let's see if you guys could predict who thinks it's more morally acceptable, men or women.
Men.
Men thinks it's more morally
I
acceptable.
think more men are on that side than the proportion of women.
Wow, you're right. 61% of women characterize themselves as pro-choice, compared to just 41% of men. The gender gap was the highest in the 30 years that Gallup has conducted an annual survey. In 2024, a solid majority of Americans believe that abortion was morally acceptable. This year, just 49% of Americans said the same. So something is changing in this area, and probably for those who are pro-life in a good way. Let me make sure I have that right. 54% believe that abortion was morally acceptable this year. Since 2024, 49% of Americans said it was morally acceptable. The share of Americans who see abortion as morally wrong has increased from 37% to 40%.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is. I mean, it's not a huge difference, mind you, but it's certainly going in the right direction. What's causing it to change? And I'm kind of curious. Is it a general conservative?
Swing.
Maybe people are less afraid to say what they believe on this issue.
I think that's true. And of course, the Dobbs decision made it legally okay to say, abortion should be considered, and it is no longer a slam dunk. It's all done. Shut up and take your medicine.
Yeah, and there also, I think, small things helped the change in that statistic. There was a movie that came out a few years ago. I think it was called like A Matter of Life or something. And it was a true story of an abortion director, right?
Right.
She was one of the directors.
Unplanned. It was called Unplanned.
Unplanned. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. And anyway, it actually did fairly well. And to see this movie as somebody that was pro-choice, and what made the difference is after years of working in an abortion clinic, she had never actually witnessed an abortion.
Right.
And then she did, and her whole perspective changed.
And I remember that the doctor, and if you saw the movie, maybe you remember the doctor made a snide comment just as he was performing the abortion. He said, "Okay, beam me up, Scotty."
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that in the movie, but it was like, oh my goodness.
Oh goodness.
And so it was just sort of like the abortion provider just didn't seem to understand the significance of what was happening.
Evilness. Oh goodness.
Or evilness, or maybe just a complete lack of awareness or understanding that it was a human life.
Well, I find that the doctors that perform these operations, they know clinically, they know scientifically and medically what they're doing, and that it's killing a human being. There's no way around that. So they play a game with it. I know my brother-in-law was an attorney for pro-lifers, and he was defending them in Fresno one time, several years back, and he was questioning the doctor about practice, and he was asking easy questions and getting him to answer. And finally, he said, "So when you do an abortion, you remove something? Is that right?" "Yes." "And what is it that you're removing?" He said, and the doctor said, "A cancerous growth."
Yeah.
And when he'd said that, it was like this monkey had flown out into the atmosphere, and everybody saw it, and everybody went, what is he telling himself so he can do this? It was evident right there. He plays a game with his own mind and pretends he's removing cancer instead of a human being. So I was part of a deposition of another abortion doctor who was a Persian man who had done abortions in Iran, though illegal and considered immoral there. He did them anyway, and his dodge was to blame it on the girl. I don't want to do this. It's morally reprehensible for me to do this, but since my patient has asked for it, I'm bound to perform it. So he blames it on the girl. So he hates the women.
I think I suspect maybe it has more to do with the science than it does God's word. As much as we want to believe that people are reading the Bible and reading what the verses say in the Bible about.
I always use the science when I was trying to convince people, because you don't have to get over that prejudice.
Right.
You don't have to convince them of God and the Bible. You just say it is killing a human little child. Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not. So this is a human child that they're alive, and they have a distinct DNA from the time of conception forward. So and they're living. So what is it about that that's okay?
Yeah. Since the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe v. Wade, the plurality has consistently said abortion is morally acceptable rather than wrong, including still today 49% to 40% today overall. But this year's Gallup poll on abortion comes through, of course, the decision we just told you about. So Yeah, I suspect that it's the science that's really making the difference in this. Overall, the Gallup poll showed an increase in the percentage of Americans who identify as pro-life compared to a year ago. In 2025, 43% of Americans described themselves as pro-life compared to 41%. That's pretty much a tie, but not significantly significant, but still going in the right direction for somebody who's pro-life.
Well, it should tell you that if you're a political candidate and you want to, get in the women's vote, you don't make a big announcement about how pro-choice you are, because you have just failed to read the cookie crumbs.
I remember
women are slanting against that.
Yeah, I remember the Democratic Party thought that the abortion issue was going to be a big winner for them.
Yeah.
During the last presidential election, and it turned out maybe that it wasn't. Not only was it not a winner, it may have been a detriment to Kamala Harris's campaign.
Yeah. Could well have
Yeah,
been.
yeah. I saw a news article. That was a news story on. It was on TV, and they said the top 10 things that most Americans are concerned about. Abortion was like number 7 or 8, because it was the economy, it was crime, it was our safety, it was food prices, it was
Illegal immigration.
illegal immigration. Yeah, but abortion was way down there.
I think what's helping the pro-life movement as well is that they're not acting insane. They're not waving signs of dead fetuses and yelling killer and murder to women who go into Planned Parenthood.
Oh, yeah.
They used to do that. For a time, there were some that used to do
Extremists,
that.
yeah,
Real
sure.
extremists,
Some
and I
did.
think that really some did.
Yeah,
You're
right.
right. But it only takes a couple to really mess things up.
And that's what they'll focus on. Look what they're doing, and it's like it
Yes.
applies to everybody.
Yeah.
That's when I said, get off my side,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You got to lop those. You got to lop off the crazies off the side.
Right.
And on the other side, they have their crazies too, which
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I think the crazies might be the majority now. Just my opinion. It's
Yeah.
not the opinion of the host of the show or the.
Right.
Well, they don't have a
Management.
logical position to state, so
It's-
they have to use all this euphemism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh well, but it's God's children, people.
Well, we're going to take a commercial break right now. We're going to come back, talk more about. I think we'll probably go to Iran, talk a little bit about what's going on in Iran, and the significance of that from a biblical perspective. We'll do that when we come back after the break. As we record this show, things are still sort of up in the air with what's going on in Iraq and Israel.
In
But-
Iran.
In Tehran, what did I say? I said
Yeah,
Iraq.
Iraq, yeah.
I meant Iran. Iran and Israel, excuse me. Thank you.
All right.
All those I's, I get them all mixed up. Yeah, it's still kind of I guess you probably get asked this a lot with Bishop Peter Hansen of St. Augustine Anglican Church. You must get asked this a lot because you have sort of a knowledge. Your wife is from Iran. You've been there yourself. You have a certain. You seem to follow it pretty well, and of course you know the Bible like the back of your hand. Is there something that's going on that is leading to, gosh, I hate having to keep saying this, the end of the world where Jesus is going to come? Is this a sign of something that's about to happen, or is this maybe what's going on here?
Well, wars and rumors of wars. I mean, Christ warned us against that. He said, "Don't get too quick to push the button. We are going to go through trials and tribulations." Now, there are scriptures that indicate kind of two different ways. In certain scriptures, they talk about Iran and that sort of area as being very, very aggressively against the people of God and being against the Jews or the Christians.
And that would be Iran.
Yes.
Okay.
But but there is also some prophecy about Elam and that Christ would set his throne within her, and that there would be something rebirth of the faith of Jesus.
Of Elam. What is Elam? Is that?
Okay? Elam, and Pars and there's three, and Media are three parts of Iran. They're the people, the groups that formed the Persian people, and they're listed. As a matter of fact, if you go to Revelation or Acts chapter 2, and you have the Peter and the newly reborn disciples of Christ coming out into the street and speaking everybody's language, it lists them, and the first three that are listed are all Persians. They're all there. The Persian people, we got to remember our history. When Cyrus the Great came in to be the emperor of the Persian Empire, just having conquered Babylon, he was the first favorable host of the Jewish people. They'd all been captivated before. They'd all been killed or turned into slaves. But this time, he was a beneficial host, and he allowed them to go back and rebuild their capital, rebuild their temple, and he funded it, and he gave them back the vessels, the holy vessels that had been stolen from the temple with the Babylonian Empire, and he gave them protection. So, and from then on forward, the Iranian and Persian nation was a benefactor to the Jews. That was true for almost 2,500 years.
Yeah.
From Persepolis forward. But you've got now the Ayatollah Khomeini came into power and flipped that over, and all the Jews had to flee from that country. So there had been a lot of positive relationship, and at the time of Christ, it was a positive relationship.
So when the United States is looking at this, and Benjamin Netanyahu is looking at this, are they looking at what you've just said? Are they taking these scriptures, this history, and the prophecy of what still has to happen into consideration when they make their decisions? Do you believe, or should they?
There are people among both governments who can speak to them about these truths or these biblical things. At least, religious things. Even if you don't give them credence, you've got to understand that a lot of people are strongly motivated by these beliefs.
And they're making their decisions based on those beliefs.
If you have a political party that completely disregards Christians and believers and says you're all stupid and we're going to do what we want to do, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
You're going to lose because there's a strong element of motivational stuff. So they're aware. I mean, Netanyahu is not unaware of biblical prophecy or things about Iran or the history that Iran had with his people. But this got turned around in a lifetime, 46 years ago.
What still has to happen in Iran? Because if I understand what you said, a certain sector of Iran has to turn into becoming Christian believers. Is that what has to happen?
I don't know if they'll all become Christians,
Not
but there's a rapid growth of the church in there right now because they've completely abandoned Islam. The population has. The power in the government is still strongly behind Islam, but the population doesn't go to mosque. They make jokes about the imams and the mullahs. They disfavor the government, but they abide by it. They just do what they have to do to get along and not get killed, because the government is quick to round you up.
That's why President Trump and a lot of people the pundits for this have been saying the goal here right now would be for the people to rise up and overthrow the current regime. That's what they think might be the best scenario, yeah. Internally, the people would rise up and overthrow this regime.
Is that why I think the United States, and it appears to me that President Trump and his administration has been very, very careful where they're treading here. They're not going in like sometimes, Trump is like a pit bull in a china shop, and he's ready to come in and do something. It seems like he's showing a lot of caution here, and I'm wondering, is he showing too much caution? Do you think that there's going to come a point where the United States has to get involved in this situation, or just to let it lie? I mean, you've got these nuclear bombs, 3 or 4 miles down below the Earth's surface, and there's only one way to get them, and that's with a bomb that the United States has and a plane that can transport that bomb there. Does the United States get involved in this? Or does the United States just sit back and say, we're going to let Israel fend for itself?
I don't think either of those options are the way it's going to play out. I think we'll be involved in some fashion. One of the things that we keep noting of Trump's peculiarities is that he makes very big statements and scary ones. Sometimes the people think that it would take war to fill them out, like let's have Greenland now.
Yeah. Let's take over the Panama Canal.
Let's take over the Panama Canal. And then you find out it's a negotiating position.
Right.
And then that he ends up working a deal, and the world follows him. and starts taking his lead. We're going to shut the border immediately. And he did.
He did that time, yeah.
He acted upon that, but that didn't take a war.
Right.
But he seems to take these big, bold stands in bright colors. And then he works the back room and says, okay, you don't want that outcome, sit down. Let's get this. Now, the one conflict he hasn't been able to solve as quickly as he felt was the Ukraine and Russia. But that's still in the works. And everybody knows there's peace talks being put forward, and those guys still keep bloodying each other's nose while we sit by. But we're not necessarily going to back the one and keep this going and egging them on, because that's just going to grind up human beings.
Well, the Bible talks about wars and rumors of wars.
Yeah.
We've had wars going on in this world since the beginning of time. And just in my lifetime, I was born in 1960, and just before that, you had all kinds of, not just wars that were involved in the United States.
Lots of them.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
And I think there's this belief that somehow the wars and rumors of wars have grown over time, when it really, we pretty much have the same amount of conflict as we've always had, haven't we?
Or less.
Or less.
Or less,
Yeah, sometimes less. Actually, yesterday, President Trump, he basically said Iran should have taken the deal I offered them. So he basically said Tehran needs to evacuate right now. It's a big threat. And he didn't necessarily say he was going to do anything, but he was also, something's going to happen. So there are people right now that are fleeing. I just looked at the article. People are fleeing, and so let's see what happens. I always pray for peace, but I also know the biblical prophecies. Everybody doesn't all get together and sing Kumbaya and Jesus is Lord and get.
I think that was the question I was asking, is we do read the biblical prophecies, and they talk about wars and rumors of wars, but that has always been the case. Sometimes I think we think in terms of the wars that we're involved in, but there's wars going on all around the world that sometimes doesn't get any attention at all.
And look what's happening in Africa. Christians are getting brutally murdered every day in Nigeria, and also the Dominican Republic of the Congo, which is actually very Islamic. And so there's small battles everywhere. Maybe not a full-fledged war in some places, but I think just recently we avoided a war with India, not us in the United States, but who was it? India and Egypt, was it? They were battling, and that quelled down. So that was a rumor of a war there. So I would tell people that are worried, no matter what happens, just get right with Jesus. That's the whole thing. Just work your relationship with Jesus, and just trust God that through all this, it's going to be okay.
We live kind of a sheltered existence here in the United States, don't we? We're very lucky.
I'm hoping that continues,
I am too.
Netanyahu said the other day that the next city to be bombed would be New York City. And I don't know what he's referring to, but I guess he's trying to not have us sit on the fence.
Yeah.
He's a wily one, that guy.
He's a smart man, and he's educated here.
Was he educated in the United States?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
He used to be, was it Donald Trump Jr.'s, or Eric Trump, soccer coach, I think.
Is that right?
Yeah. They had a very close relationship during Trump's first term. Eric Trump was very involved with Israel.
Yeah, well, they're selling iPhones now. You see that? I don't understand that Trump family. Something else. They're an interesting group of people.
Yeah. President Trump told Apple you better start making your iPhones here in the United States. Let's see where that goes.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, may God save Israel, and may God save Iran.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And the United States, while we're at it, Bishop Peter Hansen of St. Augustine Anglican Church, 10 o'clock services on Sunday morning. They're located over on Salem Street in downtown Chico. Thank you so much, gentlemen. A good discussion. We'll talk to you next time here on Rebel Religion in the News. Take good care, and so long, everybody.